Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today in this feature-focused webinar all about workload placement policies. This webinar will be recorded, so you will be getting the recording for this webinar to your inboxes right after we're done with the live webinar. We're going to be talking about cloud policies, DevOps policies, different types of policies you can wrap around cloud usage in order to create these guardrails for the consumption of cloud resources and the smooth delivery or frictionless delivery of self-service. We won't have time to go over absolutely everything Scalr can do in order to deliver that self-service. The feature-focused webinars are laser-focused on a single solution or a single feature, and today it will be those workload placement policies. So I am going to go through just a couple of slides in order to give you some broader context for some of the stuff that we'll be discussing, but make sure you submit any questions that you might have to the GoToWebinar questions menu. And even if I won't have time to answer them as we're going through this, we'll definitely follow up with everybody to make sure that those questions are answered. So as I said, the agenda for today, this is going to be a quick 20-minute webinar. I'm going to go through a couple of slides explaining Scalr enterprise scopes and how Scalr sees the policy engine and how we view what you can see on the screen right now, how you can achieve governance through policy, to give you some broader context to some of the stuff that we'll be talking about. Right after that, we're going to jump into the demo and take a look on how we implement some of that stuff to give you a better idea of how that works. Okay, so first thing I want to quickly go through is what we call the Scalr enterprise scopes. And some of you may have already seen this, so I won't go into this into too much detail. I just want to show you where we'll be operating within the Scalr enterprise-grade cloud management platform. So the idea of scopes within Scalr is essentially different levels of management. It's how Scalr enforces hierarchical policy within the enterprise. So let's go through this quickly. Each one of these scopes, as I said, is a level of management. It's a level of management where you can create and enforce policy or make resources available for all scopes lower than the one you're on, all the scopes contained within that within the higher scope. A good way to think about this is like the federal government, where you have the federal government that can make some rules and laws, and then every state within that federal government has to abide by those rules. But each of those states can have cities in them. So each level is a level of management or a level of government that can set its own rules, but still has to abide by the rules by one level above it, by one level higher. So the corporate scope can represent corporate IT or whoever owns cloud in a specific organization, where everything is managed at a higher scope, where you can see how much you're spending on cloud and kind of divide up the different lower scopes of usage within the organization. We're going to see that in just a minute. Within the corporate scope, you'll have your multiple accounts. Each account can be a business unit or a department within the organization. And each one of those accounts will have multiple environments within. And environments, that's where we're going to be operating in today's feature-focused webinar. We're going to be enforcing policies on these environments. And the environments is where your end users will actually be interacting with Scalr to consume cloud resources. The mission with Scalr is really to enable self-service cloud consumption in a responsible and secure and cost-effective manner. And the way that we do that is through hierarchical policy, through this top-down approach for policy enforcement. So what we're going to do, we're going to enforce policy here at this level, right above the environment level, which means every policy that I'm going to set will be enforced on the entire environment. So for example, if I want to say something like, all the Linux instances that are deployed in the US East 1 region must use this security group as a base, and the end user is not able to change that. They don't have a choice. Maybe they can choose other security groups, or maybe not. I can make those tweaks, but I don't want to make the dangerous decisions or the dangerous choices available for them. So that's what I mean by frictionless interaction with the console. So we're going to take a look. We're going to take a look at that. Next thing I want to quickly go over is what are we going to do today, and what component of the Scalr Cloud Policy Engine we're going to be focusing on in this webinar. So as you can see on the screen, we say to achieve governance over the enterprise cloud, Scalr employs the Cloud Policy Engine. And the Cloud Policy Engine is essentially a set of different policies around different aspects of cloud computing and the consumption of cloud resources that build those guardrails around that consumption. So that means that can mean what my budget is, which chef recipes am I supposed to run when I'm deploying something. Am I supposed to let ServiceNow know about everything that I'm supposed to be doing whenever I provision a server? What sort of permissions and how do I authenticate when I log into the console, or even when I make an API call? Which clouds, which locations am I supposed to use? Which security groups? Which tagging policies? I want to make as many of these decisions. I want to set as many of these decisions in advance so my end users won't have to make them themselves. So you can see here under this box that says Cloud Policy Engine that I have these smaller boxes within: financial policy, lifecycle policy, integration policy, access policy, and workload placement policy. So financial policy will be the budgets and the application level visibility into my cloud consumption, but also something like cost reduction policies, like lease management or shutting down unused instances, cleaning up resources, stuff like that will also be a part of that financial policy. Lifecycle policies would be the automation that I use in order to govern the lifecycle of my applications. So, for example, as I mentioned before, whether I want to leverage Chef or Puppet or Ansible or Salt or any of these tools, that will be under lifecycle policies. If I want to let my database servers know whenever, if I want to let my database servers, my front-end servers know whenever a new database server comes online, that will be a lifecycle policies. Integration policies will be any third-party integrations, any other tool that I want Scalr to integrate with, because the approach that Scalr takes a very extensible approach to integrating with your existing ecosystem. So if I want to integrate with a notification system or an identity authentication system or a CMDB like ServiceNow, all of that will fall under the integration policies. Access policies will be my role-based access control, my permission policies. Once a user has been granted access into an environment, what can they actually do once they've accessed that cloud environment? That's my access policy. What we're going to be focusing today is the workload placement policies. Or we can also call this cloud policies, because these are the limitations that we put on cloud usage for our end users in the environments that they work on. So if I want to make a statement like all Linux instances in this region must use this Chef server, or all the instances have to have this set of tags, or use this security groups, or only use this subnet, or only use this region, or anything like that. Or I want to enforce a convention for server naming. Things like that will be cloud policies or workload placement policies. So the way it will work is that a request will come from the users, either through the API or through the UI, which we will be working in. That request will be handled by the Cloud Policy Engine, and then we will decide whether that user's request is granted. And of course, this process is automated. the idea is we want to allow that kind of pace of innovation. We want to allow users to get the resources they need and fast without waiting, a week, 2 weeks, however long it takes in sort of a ticketing paradigm to get the resources that they need. But we also want to make sure that a user only gets something if they have the relevant permissions, and that's really where the fact that Scalr has the context really comes into play. So a user submits their request. They want to provision a farm. They want to provision a role. They want to provision some resources, and we see that it matches. It goes through the Cloud Policy Engine, and they're able to provision it. And of course, if they're not able to do something, then they won't have access to that thing. Maybe they then need to request further resources. Okay, so let's quickly jump into the demo and take a look at some of the things that we've been talking about so far. So as you see here, signified by this orange bar here at the top, right here in my demo machine and in my Scalr machine, I'm at the corporate scope. This means that right now I have a complete view of everything that's going on in my cloud environment. And I have all these different Scalr accounts within that. These are compartmentalized cloud deployments. Each one of these is like a business unit or department within my organization. You can say that these are my internal customers within the organization. So let's dig into one of these accounts. I'm going to go to this corporate IT account. And let's take a quick look at the environments that I have here. I'm going to be working with this PCI production environment. I have a few different cloud accounts attached to it. So let's choose this PCI production environment. This would be my my environment dashboard. This is where the end user will actually be operating. So I do want to mention again that there's a lot of stuff that Scalr does to facilitate self-service, and we're only going to be taking a look at one of those things, which, as we said, are the workload placement policies. Okay, so just as a quick reminder for how Scalr works, we have this idea of farms. A farm is essentially an application. It's the description of the desired state of each one of your applications. And within that farm, the different tiers will be what we call roles. So if I have a 3-tiered web application, and within that I have a load balancer, a database, and a front-end server, each one of those tiers is a role. That's the catalog item that you choose out of the self-service catalog to populate your stack, your application. What we want to do now is we want to create a policy so my end users won't have to make some of those decisions. So let's do that right now. Let's go to our policies, and let's create some new policies. And let's use that same example I've been talking about with the security group and the OS type and the location, just as an example. But you'll get the idea for the rest of the policies. So all policies in Scalr have a consistent policy language. All of them are defined in the same way, which makes things easier. You can see a list of all the different policies that I have here under my my different policies within this environment. So, for example, we said we wanted to limit the security groups. So let's start with that. I'm going to choose the cloud security group. I want to go with AWS. The location, I want it to be US East 1. I want this for EC2 instances, and I want this for Linux instances. So basically what I'm saying is any instance that's provisioned within the North Virginia region that is a Linux instance has to use the security group that I'm going to specify, and I have a security group called allow SSH. Very simple. So this will be kind of my baseline security. So I'm going to add and enforce this. But another important thing is I also want to make sure that users can only provision into this location within this environment. So I'm going to add another policy, and I'm going to add a cloud location policy. and I'm going to say with AWS, and obviously I have similar ones for other clouds as well. For AWS, I only want to make the US East and this North Virginia region available for this environment. So I'm going to add and enforce this one as well. Some of the other policies that I have here are tagging policies. So I have a policy here. This is for another region, but it's the same policy. That I want to tag the LDAP username for each user. These will be for each instance that's being provisioned. These are Windows instances in this statement specifically, but this will basically use AWS tags to say this is the LDAP username for each specific user, the one that provisioned that machine. The last policy I do want to add on to this before we actually go through the process of provisioning is I also want to limit the instance types that can be provisioned within this this environment. So let's take the cloud instance types policy, and I'm going to go with AWS. We're working in the North Virginia region, and I'm talking about Linux instances right now. And I want to make only some of these. Let's the M3 medium, the M3 large. These are the ones, these 4 instances, these are the ones that I want to actually make available for my end users. So this is that last policy that I'm going to add and enforce. Okay, so we can go on and create a more robust overall policy for this environment. And but I think we get the picture of how these policies works. Just to go over some of the other policies that you can find here, as we said, chef servers, which cloud networks, which subnets, the security group we saw. We can force encryption for storage volumes, specifically for Azure, which resource groups, which storage accounts, availability sets. We can enforce the usage on public IPs, whether we want to assign it or not. There's a lot of different things that a lot of decisions we can make for our users. And the policy doesn't end there because, as I said earlier, we are focusing on just one aspect of enforcing policy on cloud usage right now. Let's see these policies in action before we wrap this up. And again, if you have any questions, make sure to submit them in the GoToWebinar menu. I can see that we already have a few questions that we will follow up on. So I headed over to my Farms tab, and I can see the different farms that I have here. Let's create a brand new one. And if you're not familiar with the Scalr provisioning experience, then you're more than welcome to go through our wiki and see how we provision a farm and go through the tutorials there. Also, make sure you check out the webinar that we did on the storefront, which provides a simpler experience for provisioning based on our API. So let's attach a budget here. Let's call this policy webinar test farm. This will be owned by the Scalr Ops team. These, again, are all decisions that I can make in advance for my end users. And what I really want to do here is I want to add a farm role. So this will be my self-service catalog, and you can customize all of these roles. Let's just go with the base role for this example, because I just want to show you those. Policies in action. So we can see that I can choose a location because we've only allowed US East 1 for Linux instances that are on AWS, so I don't have any other choice. I can eliminate the other choices as well. I can see that for the instance types, I only have a few choices here because, again, we've enforced a policy that that limits the instance types that we can use. So I'm going to add this role to the farm as is. Okay, let's just check out that last policy that we had, which was the security policy. And you can also see that the security group is enforced here. Now, I didn't have a policy that allows the user to select their own security groups. If you remember, there was a little checkbox under the cloud security. We can actually quickly go back to there. We still have one more minute. Our cloud security groups policy. So we could specify whether or not we want to allow user to specify additional security groups. And because this is not checked, our users actually can't. So we saw that policy in action. Okay, so that's it for this feature focus on workload placement policies. I hope this has been informative for you, and it gave you a good idea of how you can enforce policies and create these policies through the Scalr Cloud Policy Engine, specifically those workload placement policies. Make sure that for any questions, you contact me directly at ron@scalr.com, and make sure to keep your eyes open for an email with the recording for this webinar and more information for our future webinars, which will be on other focus areas within the Cloud Policy Engine and also other Scalr features. Thank you all, and I'll see you on the next one.